All right. So let's move on to our second question. And the second question is great. I love it. How do we embrace pain and become comfortable with the uncomfortable so we are able to feel and not resist? It's one thing to understand it intellectually, but how do we embrace what our lower nature fears? I think oftentimes we resist it, which prolongs the pain and could make things more painful than it needs to be. And I think this is connected to suppressing emotions as well. Love this question. Literally, what I think the entire practice of yoga is developing our capacity to experience greater levels of pain. But having said that, it's greater levels of pain, but also greater levels of joy. This is what people do not understand about pain, is that actually, in reality, what we really want is to experience more joy. However, this is like an elastic band. If I'm like, if this is joy, if this is pain, the more joy I want to feel, the more pain I will have to feel. I will have to experience to build my capacity, my container to hold all emotions. And the more complex emotions that you can hold concurrently, that's actually what literal enlightenment is. It's like when your arms are so big, there's so much joy and so much pain. This is enlightenment right here. You know, it's like your absolute maximum capacity of like holding both emotions. So this is the thing where people are not really, people always want to have a joy. They're like, I want to experience like joy and ecstasy. And this is why people go into like drugs and things like that. But what they're experiencing is not even the real thing. It's like a pseudo thing, and it's with a substance that when you remove that substance, it's no longer can bring you joy. So it's not a sustainable practice, right? But the pain is something that it's actually the fear. What we actually fear, end up fearing, is our greatness, is our light, rather than our darkness. This is why people have no shame or much less shame, or they're much more willing to remain in the addiction, remain in the drugs, remain in the like quagmire of that situation, because they're more comfortable being in their darkness than they are embracing their light. People actually become really fearful of their light because it's much more scary for you to accept your power, your like magnanimity, like all of those things, much more scarier than your pain. Okay, so so your question is, how do we deal with pain, right? So I was thinking of like a process so long that I didn't even finish like fully reflecting it, but I think we got most of it. Okay. All right. So the first thing I wanted to say is that basically just reiterating what I just said. If you want to experience more pain, if you want to experience more joy, you have to experience more pain. It's kind of like tit for tat. It's like an elastic band, you got to experience both. So step one is recognizing what type of pain you have. And I'm going to give you 5 categories, okay? Spiritual pain, mental pain, emotional pain, energetic pain, physical pain. Energetic might be a little difficult for you, for people who are not really so in tune with their body, to be like, what is energetic pain? We'll get to that part, okay? That was step 1. Step 1 is that whenever you're experiencing pain, categorize it. Categorize it into, do you think you're experiencing spiritual pain? Is it mental pain? Is it emotional pain? Is it energetic pain? Or is it physical pain? Okay? First step, step 1. Step 2, I want you to distinguish whether or not it is necessary to actually experience this pain. This is the most important thing really to do, even though it doesn't change what we do later on, but it's so important for you to be aware whether or not it's necessary or not. Having said that, what does it mean for it to be necessary? There are tests and challenges and pains that God gives us, or is for a divine purpose. Even if you don't believe in God, nature gives us whatever you want to say, right? We're not attached to the word. Then there's the things that we test ourselves with. We put ourselves in pain. This is the category that we ultimately have control over. We do not have control over this. However, having said that, there's no way for you to, for our human baby minds, to discern what is a test and will of God and what is this. So really, because we are higher beings, karmically speaking, we must protect our own souls. And in terms of like the other species, like animals, like plant kingdom, mineral kingdom, we are the highest kinds. We are also stewards of these kingdoms. So the karmic harm to harming ourselves is actually the highest. So we must at all points protect and avoid pain, avoid being hurt, avoid putting ourselves through tests. This is really important, okay? So step 2 is asking, is it necessary? Yes or no? And I want to just share, if you distinguish this as yes, I want you to ask yourself a couple questions. The first is like, if it's necessary, what is it necessary for? Okay. For example, so kind of like think about, is it for your purpose? Is it for your job? Is it for the future? Is it something that you know you're about to encounter in the future? Like, how is it relevant to that, right? So I have a personal example and an example of a friend. So my personal example is that I know I am meant to take care of or contribute in some way, small or big way, to the global health of the masses, right? So in order for me to have that global portion, I would really need to know or feel the oneness of humanity. Like the global world needs to really be my love, not just individual people. So I grew up always wanting to be a physician. The individual health kind of got that covered. But because I entered into a society where I don't look like the people, I don't speak, you would not normally, I learned how to speak like the people, but you would normally, it's not common for me to speak this language and be a part of the society, right? So always in my childhood, I was seen as separate. I was either treated really well or really bad. No moderation in between. And I couldn't figure out when people would like me or when people would, like what it was that people like because it was like not based on anything that was of true substance, right? It was based off of the color of my skin or the fact that I was a foreigner or whatever, right? So the wound that I needed, I would say required as a child, is something that I had to be seen as separate for me to be in so much, to realize how painful that was, to never, ever make someone else feel like an other. Like that is part of the purpose. Global health is like when you realize how much pain it was to not being cared for, to not be considered, to not be acknowledged. Whew, then it's like you would never want someone else to feel that way. So that was kind of like a necessary wound, pain for what I want to do now, right? Not that I was aware of all these like mental gymnastics when I was like a younger kid, right? Like it was just like, oh, they don't like me, or they don't want to play with me, or they don't count me as one of them, you know? So it's like I learned the language really well so that nobody would think that I was different from other people, right? It stems from a wound rather than like wanting to strive for excellence or in a language or anything like that. So it's like now I'm aware of that. So that is like a personal wound of a child that is necessary for later on its purposes. So that now when I experience someone having prejudice towards me or something like that, I can see it so clearly, and how I'm like, I had that wound. I know that wound so well. I hate that wound, or like I know how painful that wound is, and I would never want anyone to do it. So when someone meets me again with prejudice, attacks that same sensitive area within me, I know that it's not them, and I know that it has like a deeper purpose. But now also knowing, having known that wound, it doesn't affect me as much, right? So it contextualizes the pain. Second story, the one of my friend. So my friend grew up on an island, and he was like, I fell in love with this girl. We were super young. We were like teenagers, and she was like the love of my life. And they both lost their virginities to each other. And he was like, oh my gosh, she was like, I loved her so much. Like I wanted to give her like my virginity, right? And then he said to me that one day she had gone to another island, and she hooked up with this guy, and she came back and she told him that she hooked up with this guy, and then she got pregnant. This crushed him. Like imagine the betrayal, right? Like ouch, ouch, ouch. You lose your virginity to someone, and they end up getting pregnant with someone else's baby, right? He was so hurt by this. And this man was very, very intelligent, like so smart, so like really you could see you could see his like potential as like a person. And after this happened, he like removed himself from the island. He was just like in so much pain that he like left. And in Chinese, we have a saying like 被赶走, meaning that you were like shooed away. Like it was, the pain was so great that you like pushed it so far back that it had to be this emotion, right? So when he went out, like and there was a scholarship that he got when he was with this girl that he didn't end up accepting it because he wanted to be with her. But because this thing happened, he took the scholarship and ended up leaving. And he got his education and kept on going till now he has like a PhD, like amazing, smart, intelligent. And he was sharing with me how like he just can't get over this whole situation. And as I was listening to this, I like shared with him like what I saw from my perspective. And who knows whether or not this is true, right? This is just from my perspective. And I was like saying, that had to happen to you. That really, like from a bird's eye view, like in terms of like if I were thinking like God, not that I can in any way possible. But if I was standing on a bird's eye view and I saw a person who had so much potential on an island, and the island would not be able to fulfill any of its like needs, like would not be able to develop his character, would not even be able to give him the woman that he would want, because the society that an island has, it's like this is what people do. People just have babies out of wedlock, and this person was like really didn't want to randomly have a baby with someone else and just like kind of like wing it. Like they really wanted to have like a really happy, like united family that was different to the society. So everything about his character was like different and outside of the regular norm of the society that they were raised in. So what that would entail from a bird's eye view is that the universe gave you a little bit of a nudge, a scholarship to leave, but you don't leave because you're attached to the things on that island, right? And so something had to betray you to such a great proportion for you to have left to fulfill your potential, not only in your education, but also in love. Like the type of woman that a person like this would need would not be on an island. Not to say that there's people on an island that are not great. I found love on an island. I like, it's amazing. Okay. Not that that's not true, but I'm just saying that like, it doesn't make sense from a higher bird's eye view, looking at this whole situation, that if a person had so much potential, they needed to have a very strong reason to like eject themselves out of the island in order to fulfill their higher potential. And this is what the soul has come here to do, is to fulfill its highest potential. The soul's journey is one that it's like, it depends on how it can help you grow and expand, not for you to get all the things that you want. So what your soul desires is expansion, not the kind of love on an island where it's like you would have to like maybe share a woman with like many men. Like, no, if you wanted that family, that united family, and like to have like one baby with one woman, and like you wanted that integration, then an island life or culture would just constantly reflect back to you that it's like this. So I shared this with him, that he needed to leave the island. He needed a very strong reason in order to leave the island so that he could fulfill his potential and like really achieve like what he wants, right? And I was like, don't be sad that you lost maybe your virginity to like someone, because there are yogic ways in which you can energetically purify yourselves, so that if you were to meet someone else who might also be a virgin, that you would be able to still bond together in a pure manner without the imprints of the past and without the hurts. But had you not left, you would not know that that was possible. Your education would not get to a point, nor would you meet the people who would teach you the tools and the ways in which for you to actually heal that hurt and see beyond, because that thing kind of like keeps you stuck and just like, and this person was still keeping contact with this woman. I was like, why would you do that? Like, why would you like put yourself so low? Like, God has already like ejected you out of the country and you're still holding on to someone who does not deserve you. And because you're clinging on to this, you cannot meet the person that is truly meant for you to truly experience that happiness, that joy, that love, that passion, that like intimacy, that like togetherness, that oneness within a united family. Like, you wouldn't be able to experience that if you don't let this go. You need to let this go in order for this to happen. And this is where what you shared in the question is so relevant. We resist the pain, we prolong the pain so that we don't move on, right? So what I just shared was step 2 of, is this necessary or not? And these are the 2 things that when you want to say yes, you look at these 2 examples of the stories that I just shared, and you decide for yourself. Usually in that immediate moment, you don't have this kind of wisdom, okay? So I would just say, always answer no. Always answer no so that you can do the rest of the processes. And either way, it doesn't matter if you answer yes or no, you're going to still move on to step 3. But here I'm going to also share, like, when you answer no, that it is not necessary, you realize that this pain that you're experiencing is not necessary. Usually that awareness in itself will let the pain go. That's step 1. That's the first kind of thing that usually happens when you acknowledge that it's not necessary. It just falls away. You're like, oh, I don't need to feel that pain anymore, you know? Or 2, welcome it. Welcome the pain that you're feeling, so it stops the resistance to the pain. So it takes away the pushing to just be like, welcome it. My gosh, pain doesn't last very long usually when you allow it to come. You just need to ride the wave, which is what step 3 is going to be about in more detail. So if you said no, it didn't move, it didn't naturally fall away, or when you welcomed it, it still didn't work, then I want you to do the Sedona method, which is basically asking yourself a series of 8 questions. Note this down. The first question is, I'm going to tell you the first 5 and then the 3 of the opposites of these, okay? So the first question to ask yourself is, would you let go of wanting approval? There's usually about 5 things that we really want that get us stuck. It's either wanting approval, wanting control, wanting security, wanting separation, or wanting oneness, okay? So basically, in the same situation as my friend, you could have this situation where you don't want to be with this girl, but then you also want to keep them close. You want separation, but you want oneness too. So this push and pull both create resistance. And sometimes it's both that you need to release in order for you to just relax and not feel the pain, right? So let go of wanting approval, ask yourself, would I let go of wanting approval for this situation? And then the opposite of that, would I let go of wanting disapproval for that situation? Okay, now we're going into the next one. Would you let go of wanting control? The opposite of that is, would you let go of wanting to be controlled? Okay, the opposites like that. So that's 1, 2, okay, of the 5. And then, would you let go of wanting security? Opposite is, would you let go of wanting to die? Surprisingly, this is actually a case. It's like, we don't want to be in this world. We're just like, screw it. Like, we don't want anything to do with anyone, like, no, like we just don't want anything. And so we just like, or we like buckle down and we just like, we want it, like we just need to be secure and we don't want to change and we don't want anything to happen. And this causes pain too. And resistance. Resistance is a lot of the pain. It's like rejecting the suffering that needs to come and purify us. Okay? Then you have wanting separation and wanting oneness. These two are already automatics like of each other, like opposites of each other. So the 5 is approval, control, security, separation, and oneness. And the 3 opposites of the wanting approval is wanting disapproval, wanting control, wanting to be controlled, wanting security, wanting to die. Okay, and then you have the wanting separation, wanting oneness. So 8 questions that you ask yourself. You release on all of them. Because one situation, would you let go of wanting to be, would you let go of wanting approval for this situation? Would you let go of wanting disapproval? And sometimes it's surprising that we actually really want disapproval, or we expect disapproval. So let go of the 8 disapproval, like the 8 modes of resistance, so that you can adjust yourself. So when you say, if this is step 2 is like, if this is necessary, no. Then you go through releasing it. If already it doesn't fall away, or if you welcome it, it doesn't fall away, then go through the 8 questions, okay? So that's that. Then, so now moving on to step 3. So regardless of whether or not you answered, yes, this pain is necessary, or no, this pain is not necessary, I still want you to go to step 3. Step 3, after step 1, is what we identified in the categories, is whether or not it's spiritual, mental, emotional, energetic, or physical pain, right? We first identified it. Now we're kind of like going on the 3rd one. And in between, we're asking whether or not it's necessary to actually go through this pain, okay? If you decide yes or no, doesn't matter, you still continue to do it. But I did want you to do the step 2 process of first going through the mental process of distinguishing whether or not you think it's necessary for you to go through this pain. Many times it's not. 99% of the time it's not. But if you so know that it is necessary, which is a very high level of wisdom, then it still helps your process of going through the pain. It helps with awareness only, okay? So step 3 is moving through each of the 5 categories and how we're going to deal with each one. That if you have spiritual pain, the antidote for that, for emotional, mental, energetic, and physical, all different, okay? So the method, you're basically asking me like many methods of how to like deal with pain. If it's spiritual pain, it's short. The list is short. There's 3 things you can do. You pray. And even if you don't have a spiritual practice, you can use any of the sacred texts and just use them as your own temporarily and just be like, whatever, I don't care, I don't believe it, I'm just in pain and I just want to relieve my pain. Just do it, like you don't have to believe in it, just pick a prayer and say it. If you're really not into that, you can pick the sacred texts of any sacred writings and read them. And the 3rd one is really communing with your creator and to really like do this as a process. And it's a process that I shared in the intuition video on YouTube, where you basically pose a question to your spirit and wait for its answer. Don't even be worried about if this is God's voice or this and that. Just pose a question to your soul and see which is like a portion of God, If you watch the intuition video, you'll see how that relates. And so that when you're thinking about when you're speaking to your own individual soul, you'll also kind of like heal that spiritual wound. But really, spiritual pain really has to do with laws and really has to do with when you deviate from a sacred law, okay? Because, so an example of a spiritual disease, which I see a lot of right now because of the pandemic, it's actually indicative of the nature of a pandemic, which is, the way I see it, is that the exact extreme opposite of a spiritual law, which is the oneness of humanity. The disease of humanity is basically a reflection of this sacred law not being obeyed. So right now we have a very common spiritual disease, I call it. If you have prejudice towards another race, if you have any negative thoughts about another race, this is a spiritual disease, because the sacred law of the oneness of humanity states that we are all creatures, creations of one creator. So if you have prejudice towards one of the other things, it's a spiritual disease because you don't see everyone as one, which means you see everyone as separate. This is where addiction happens. This is where separation, this is where crimes happen. All of these things happen in this realm, okay? So this, and if you think about it, who can heal a spiritual disease? Western medicine can't. Spiritual diseases are healed by healers, yoga therapists, because it deals with the soul, okay? It deals very intimately with the soul. So it's like, it occurred to me the other day that I'm like, oh my God, all of these people that I'm witnessing having these spiritual diseases and really going against humanity, literally going against themselves in a way, because it's seeing themselves as separate to other people. Really, it is only, I'm like thinking of what profession is there in society that can actually help this. And literally, I didn't come up with anything else other than a yoga therapist. But please do share with me, like any healers, shamans, like healers who have that spiritual component within their healing modality, they can do it, but they will understand this concept. But like Western medicine, Chinese medicine doesn't quite talk about it in this like way. Ayurveda for sure. So these are like really important in terms of like spiritual diseases or pain. Same thing. This is the spiritual pain is from a spiritual disease. Okay, so prayer is number one, and in fact, prayer is by far the highest one for all of these categories. Prayer accompanies all of them. That's why I started it first. When you pray, it actually heals your mental, emotional, energetic, physical, because your soul is ultimately entirely independent from its bodily ailments and functions. However, if you have a spiritual disease, you need its spiritual medicine, which is prayer, which is nourishment for the soul. So that is going to be in the spiritual realm. So you have prayer, reading the sacred writings, and communing with God, which is also like the act of meditation. So it's basically prayer, reading the writings, and meditating is what's gonna heal your spiritual pain. Mental pain, okay? We're on mental pain. Mental pain is that you really need to see, eyes need to see, witness what is happening in this brain. And when you put it on a piece of paper, when you start journaling and reflecting and doing this practice that I'm about to share, which is like a free writing exercise, put an alarm, set an alarm on your phone, like on your timer. Oh, sorry, this is the calculator. Where is the timer? All right, timer, put a timer, you put it on 20 minutes and you click start, okay? I don't know if you can see this. Okay, now I think you can. 20 minutes and you non-stop write all of your thoughts. This is what I'm going through. This is what I'm thinking about, and you actually have your eyes look at what your thoughts, what you're thinking of, okay? And sometimes when we're thinking about one thing, but then when we start writing about a whole different topic that is actually underneath our thoughts, okay? So write down the thoughts and write it for 20 minutes nonstop. Even if you start getting to like, I don't have any thoughts, write down, I don't have any thoughts. I don't know what this girl wants me to do with this exercise. Oh, okay. And then I thought about like this grocery list, this like list or this thing that I need to do, or this pain. Oh, I thought about the pain again. Just keep writing for 20 minutes nonstop. Once you're done, I want you to go back and read it and see what your thought process is. When your eyes get to read it again, I want you to like read it like an objective observer, and to read it and see like, oh, this is like what my thoughts are, and see whether or not you can think that it's coherent with your reality. Because basically any mental pain or mental disease, mental health issues stem from what your thoughts are and what your reality is. The further away this distance, the greater the mental pain and the greater the mental health disorder. So in order to heal a mental disease, mental pain, it is to bring the realities of your current reality, of the things that you want, you don't want, that you don't have yet, and bring it closer to your mental reality and your mental expectations, right? Once you bring it closer together, meaning you're like, all right, I want this, but I'm here right now, and this causes me a lot of disappointment and pain. And the greater this distance, the greater the disappointment, the greater the pain, the greater the resistance, the greater the suffering. I'm like, I don't want this reality. I want it to change. I want it to be something else. And so by uniting it together, you kind of see, all right, wait, actually there's like step 4, 5, and 6 that I need to do in order to get from here to here. Let me just start by doing this to move it forward, right? So it's like this reality, you want to gel it together. You want to know that you can and are completely empowered to create this. I'm not talking about all mental disorders or all mental things are capable of actually making this mental process, bringing it together. But general mental health issues have to do with what you want and what your reality is the distance is far. And it's really about not knowing how to get there or not seeing a clear path and actually taking actions to do it. Okay, that's the gap of that. Or not having the patience or expecting yourself to jump from here to there overnight, you know, not understanding the rhythm, the organic modes of life and how it works, right? I'm going to talk about that a little later and how that relates to pain and process and slowing down. Okay, so that's the mental side. Let's move to emotional. The emotional side, I already have a video on YouTube of how to clear your emotional pain. And so what I wanted to say about emotions is that every emotion is attached to a story. So if I have, so giving you this example, so if I feel anger right now, I'm going to give you this process actually right now because, and the second video, you can check the YouTube video of emotional cleansing practice, but we've talked about this in the membership portal before. And that has to do with when you feel an emotion, first identify the emotion. Let's say, for instance, anger. And then step 2 is recognize when was the first time you ever felt angry. And so you really need to go back into memory, like go back into the earliest memory. So if you go back to like 4 or 5, you think of one, but then you're like, oh, no, that made you think of another one earlier than that. Go back to the earliest memory of you experiencing anger. Step 3, you think about what was the thought that you formed because of this situation. So let's say, for instance, anger. You experience anger because of something. I'll give an example in 1 second. Let me finish this process. So step 3 is identifying the belief that you have about the situation. And then step 4 is you correcting the thought. So I'm going to run you these 4 processes. So step 1, if I get angry, you experience anger. Actually, I'm going to do it with helplessness because someone gave me an example of that recently. So if I feel helplessness, I identify, I feel helplessness right now. Okay, that's the pain that I'm currently going through right now. Step 2, when was the first time you experienced helplessness? And my earliest memory of helplessness was when I was 5, 4, and we were getting ready to come to China, and uh, the doctor had apologized to my mother for saying that we don't have the right type of, we don't have liquid medicine for your daughter, so she's gonna have to swallow this. And like the doctor was really apologetic and says, I'm so sorry. And I was there, I heard this. And so I already thought that I was not going to be able to do this, right? So when we got home after dinner, we would finish dinner and everyone would be eating their medicine. And I just had such a hard time doing this process. I would be after dinner, I would have to drink so much water till like my stomach was like bloated just with water, trying to swallow this one medicine down my throat. Everyone, the table would be cleared, everyone would be going to bed, and one of the parents, is either my mom or my dad, would stay up and just wait for me to swallow this medicine so that we could go to bed. This is where I felt like really helpless. Like it was one of those situations where I really felt like I couldn't swallow. Like I really tried so many times and I was like just really having a difficult time. And so step 3 is, what is the belief that I formed because of this situation? So the belief that I formed is that if I couldn't do this, my parents would abandon me. They would go to China and they would not be able to take me because I didn't take my medicine, and then I wouldn't be protected, and then I couldn't go. This was my baby little mind thinking that they would have to leave me, right? So correct it. Now with your adult mind looking at the situation, correct it. So now with my adult mind, I'm like, my parents would never have left me, even if I never once took the medicine. They would have to take me, right? They would have to take me. And so my feelings of helplessness always is connected to the feeling of abandonment. So every time I'm feeling helpless, it's like because I'm actually feeling like I'm about to be abandoned. So usually the third one is the belief that you formed with it. It's connected. Each emotion of helplessness is connected to a belief. So you need to go back to the belief and change the belief. Okay. And then the third one, you want to tell your like inner child or that little girl, correct the belief that when I feel helpless, or when I feel like I'm having a little bit of a challenge, like overcoming something, like doing something, take your time. It's okay to take time. It's okay that I took longer than everyone else to eat my medicine because I was the youngest, that I didn't have the physical capabilities of swallowing or whatever, that it's fine. I've done this like reflection practice for this. Usually when you do it the first time, you feel like a release of some kind. You feel like you burp, you fart, you like cry. It's something that if you did it right, you touch the pain point. It's like when you're supposed to feel like in a release of some kind, or you like exhale, you release it, or you have these like little, what I call like baby breaths, like 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 the child's like crying, like one of those kind of like reactions, either like when you're crying or just like your breath will suddenly start to like flutter, right? And that's when you know that you're like you hit the real pain point. After the first time, it should like release a ginormous part of that pain from you. But if it doesn't, for this specific thing, I've actually done it so many times, and each time it was with different emotions. So it was helplessness, it was anger, it was sadness, it was resentment, it was, oh my God, like so many different things. But a lot of it has to do with this feeling helpless, feeling like I absolutely cannot do something, but in order to before I get to the next step. And it's so difficult for me to like overcome it. At one point, one of the times that I was reflecting on this sort of situation, I thought to myself, I was like, baby Nahal, I was like, if you had not heard the doctor say that, if the doctor had not said that you would have a difficult, and he didn't apologize to your mother that he couldn't, he was giving you medicine that you wouldn't be able to, he thought you wouldn't be able to eat. if he didn't say that, do you think you would even have any difficulty eating that if someone else didn't think it was difficult for you? I was like, no. I was so fearless when I was a child. Like I would, nothing would stop me. I was like, if he didn't say that, I wouldn't have known. Like I would have just like taken the medicine like everyone else. I would have seen everyone else doing it. And I'll just be like, cool, done. But because the seed was already planted in my mind that I couldn't, I believed it. And as a child, you don't have the mental processing capacities to be like, oh, that adult is wrong and doesn't know my capacity and I could actually do it. Like we don't have that kind of mental processing to be able to do something like that. So it's like really you need to kind of like adjust your mind. Or like in this situation, I was like talking to baby Nahal, and little baby Nahal was like, yeah, I would have no problem eating that. So it's like, do you think maybe the doctor didn't know our capacity? That was a huge release for me, because now as an adult, I have so much evidence of doing incredibly challenging things and always overcoming it with exceptional challenge, but always overcoming it. So it's like this feeling of helplessness is like, it's okay to take more time to do something, to accomplish something, to finish something, but we always get it done. So it's like, we don't really have that, even that thing that we did as a child that was so impossible that the doctor didn't think we could do. We did it anyways. We did it with a lot more pain and angst that we could have probably reduced, but still it was like fine. So that's the emotional pain, okay? Energetic pain. Energetic pain, I would relate it to the breath. This is where, or just like lack of energy to begin with, but it's actually related to the like emotions, mental, and spiritual as well. Because when you are disturbed in any way, in your mind, in your soul, in your emotions, your breath will change its pattern. So even if you don't identify it as your spiritual pain or mental pain or emotional pain, that requires a level of awareness to even know that difference. But you're like, my breath is not even, or my breath is like my chest is constricted or whatever. We can just deal with it on an energetic pain. And through the integrative yoga therapy framework, the 5 layers of the body, which is the physical, energetic, mental, emotional, witness layer, soul, and the bliss body, your joy, they're all the health of all these 5 layers are all interrelated. So it doesn't really matter where you deal with the pain. It doesn't matter. So if you don't even have the awareness and you're like, oh my God, I don't know if I have the awareness if this is spiritual pain, mental pain, emotional pain, don't sweat it. It doesn't matter. Okay. Any of these ways that you do that calls out to you the most is the one that is really the most accurate, because it's the most one that you're willing to actually do and heal. So any of these practices that I say, the one that you're most attracted to is the one that is usually is like, go start with that one first. You don't need to do all of them, or start with the one that you're most uncomfortable with. Do the one that you're most comfortable with. And usually working on the breath is neutral for people. It's not, it doesn't have to do with the soul, it doesn't have to do with psychology, or it doesn't have to do with emotions. So people are really cool with this one. So with the breath, what you need to do, this is why I created the 12-week Pure Breath program, is literally because I noticed that people always stop their healing process because of literally not being able to breathe through it, not being able to overcome it, because the breath is in a situation where you actually think you're going to die. Like your breath is sedated, or it's so much pressure that you're just like, no, I can't deal with this. I can't go deeper, any more deeper into this emotional pain, to this mental pain, because I literally can't breathe and I'm going to die. So once you learn just a couple breath techniques, and the Pure Breath program is a 12-week breath program teaching 10 basic breath practices. When you learn these basic breath practices, you're able to overcome any challenging situation that comes your way. You just begin to breathe through it in a manipulative way, in a way that you just learn through these techniques. Because the breath is the one thing that when you put your consciousness to it, you can change. And when you remove your consciousness and you're unaware of it, it will go back to its regular automatic form. There's no other system in the body that has this capacity where you can automatically do it and also be connected with your, my mom's checking me out right now. You can't like, you can't focus on being connected with your, please go. Thank you. I can't think now when I have someone looking at me. So when you're thinking about your breath and how it's like connected, I totally lost my train of thought. What was I thinking about? See, this is where you need to like focus on your breath. Let me do an exact practice right now. Let me do a demonstration. So yeah, going back to the whole, when it's automatic, when your breath is automatic here, you can bring your consciousness to it and actively bring your attention back. So right there, what I just did for you is a perfect real-time practice of when someone is trying to distract you and you're trying to focus on continuing your thought, right? But this is the same thing for any situation in your life, that you will have distractions, you will have like interruptions, or you have like a frustrating situation appear and you have to like readjust yourself into alignment, right? You can do these breath practices to just bring you back to center. So this 12-week pure breath program is super helpful for that. So I would really recommend getting the pure breath program. I mean, there's no other way to say it, or just going on YouTube and searching up all the breath techniques that you can. But the difference between the pure breath program, which is something I really, really wanted to instill into people and that I haven't seen anywhere else, is the fact that not only did I want to teach you breath practices, I also wanted to teach you systematic ways to build it, and also ways in which you can develop it and let it become like a habit. Okay, so that's the energetic side. Now moving on to the physical side. When you have pain, I want you to look. Let's imagine if I have shoulder pain right now. A practice that you could do is to focus your attention, is to disperse your attention away from the pain. So the pain is your shoulder. You focus your attention on the space around the pain, okay? You can even do like a global, huge round circle of the pain around your shoulder, okay? This usually changes your focus from the pain being here to the pain being here, and it actually disperses it. Immediately you'll be able to like literally dissipate your physical pain. I often have like knee pain, and when I focus around my knee, on the space around it rather than the knee itself, it just changes. But I know my knee is not a physical situation, it's a mental situation. Whenever I start thinking about the future and get worried, that's my left knee always like acts up. So it's a very specific type of thought too. You can also have a conversation with that part of your body. So the shoulder is like where you hold responsibility and like literally you shoulder the responsibility, and your knees are where you bend and be flexible to move forward in life, right? It's your feet. So each part of your body actually means something. If you don't know what it means, it's totally fine. You can ask below this video if there's like a part of your body you're like, what does this mean? Or go on louisehay.com and check out each of the physical parts of the body to see like what kind of things it's related to. And then you can speak to this part and be like, all right, where is it that we're carrying a lot of responsibility and where are we shouldering a lot of things that we actually don't need to shoulder? Because the left side is the feminine side. Where can we receive more of the shouldering responsibility, right? Or the left knee is like, where can we humble ourselves to God and trust Him into being able to give us what we need and want and moving forward, or to also not be worried so much. Well, this was the 20-minute timer that I just said. So that's something that you can do for the physical body is like think around the pain to dissipate it, but also a lot of the times the physical pain is actually in the mental category. It doesn't matter, you could try both of these techniques, and usually when we have pain, it's like we're in so much pain we need to like almost try all of them. And there are sometimes when I'm in so much of a fright or so much of a frazzleness that I literally like what do you call it, will switch so quickly between these two because I can't calm and center myself down fast enough to like just do one complete practice. That's literally a reality that happens sometimes when you know you really got into that pain point where you're like, it's like taking you out of alignment, right? So there was a final thing I just want to share with this. Let me see. So this is what I wanted to end with, is basically pain is something we need to realize. Just to summarize, the step one is categorize the pain. Step two is say whether or not it's necessary, like go through the mental questioning of it, if it's necessary or not. Third, go through each of the 5, see which one of the 5 ones. So if you identified in step 1 that it's a spiritual pain, just do the spiritual one. Or if you other ones also seem enticing to you, you can go for it. But what I wanted to say is that in terms of pain in general, and what going back to the theme of like literally yoga is literally the practice of building your capacity for pain and greater emotions and both the joy and the pain, is that another analogy that yoga gives is that it's kind of like we're like a molded clay. Okay? And after we mold our clay, and there's a shape that's involved, in order to be able to use this clay, you need to put it in the kiln. Is it called the kiln? Basically the fire, that little pot that's like like heats it up really with a very high temperature in order to harden the clay so that you can use it to like put anything else that you want in it, right? The practice of yoga is essentially not only molding the clay, but after it's molded, is putting it through this heat so that it could harden it to the point where you can hold God, really. And so the process of yoga is really the purification of this container. Not only the molding of it, but also if there's like a rock or a glass or a piece of plastic just chunked in it, when it heats up, it will break. It will not be in it, or there's bubbles in it. And this is usually these emotional toxins or mental toxins or things that should not be in our container. Our body is there. These bubbles, they will not withstand the heat of fire in order to be hardened so that we can contain God more. The whole practice of yoga is to purify your mold so that, and heat it up at the same time so that you'll be able to contain more of God. But in order to do that, you need to purify that clay. You need to purify the impurities that are there. Just like the same way if like a building was made with water bottles and cement, it will not be able to withstand an earthquake. It will fall because its structure is not like strong. But if it's built for an earthquake, that it doesn't matter what earth and heaven arise against you, you will still be immovable because your container, your vessel, your body can handle it. Okay? So the whole process of yoga is purifying this vessel to be able to contain more of God. So there was also another analogy. No, I'm going to leave that. So I'm basically going to end it here. The purities of the body, and basically how many of these toxins, like whether it's mental, emotional, spiritual, all are going to affect our vessel, physical vessel, to be able to withstand how much pain. So all of these processes that I mentioned, whether it's the Sedona method to stop you from resisting any of the pain, welcoming it, and then all the different things that you could do in order to heal your 5 layers of the body, your spiritual, mental, emotional, energetic and physical, these are the things that you could do to help you overcome the discomfort, overcome more quickly the suffering, the challenges, so that you can actually do more challenges and more difficulties, but also be able to serve mankind more with these capacities and be able to contain more of the pain of others more and more. So when you do not meet your own pain, you cannot hold the pain of another. This is why, as therapists, we can only go as far as we can only support other people as far as we have experienced pain. There's a pain that I haven't experienced. It's very challenging or almost close to impossible for me to hold a power that's greater than a pain that I've experienced, because I can't hold on to it. It's too much. My vessel needs to withstand that type of pain. So a lot of therapists have actually gone through really traumatic things. And so this is a muscle that you need to like practice, and we can all develop it. So, but really pay attention to see whether or not this is actual pain that you do need to go through, or it can be avoided. And always avoid it, not avoid it, but you need to protect this body, this vessel from pain, not to put it into pain. This is not pleasing to God. But this is also what I wanted to, this is what I wanted to end with. The practice of pain is really the practice of the prophets. You're asking me essentially the question of how did the prophets suffer so much? The prophets are the prophets because they suffered greater incapacity than anyone else. When I think about the sufferings of the manifestations of God or the prophets of the old, my physical body would shatter just having like an inkling of their suffering. Like my physical container is not strong enough to withstand that kind of pain and pressure. It is pain and pressure that is constantly, but when you kind of like every day you kind of go through a little bit of this pressure, a little bit of this like process, you kind of like develop your like muscles and things for it, until it's like able to contain that divine soul. And it doesn't matter, no matter what kind of heat attached to it after that, it doesn't affect it in any way. It doesn't affect its shape. It's like stable as a rock. So we really want to get to that point where we are imperturbable when these challenges arise. It's just like, cool, they're there. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.